Imagine you break your arm, right?
Yeah.
You go to the clinic, the x-ray shows this jagged white line. The doctor points to the screen and just says, there it is.
Right, yeah.
It's binary. It's comforting. We like things to be visible and to be categorized. But what happens when the entity reading that x-ray isn't a human doctor standing next to you, but like an invisible algorithmic model running on a server 3,000 miles away?
Yeah, that's when it gets complicated.
Suddenly, the clean, precise world of medicine gets incredibly murky.
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. I mean, we're fundamentally rewiring how care is delivered right now.
Yeah.
We're moving away from human-only observation into a space where software is actively participating in the clinical workflow.
And that is exactly why we're here today.
Yeah.
Because for everyone listening, whether you are a clinic manager trying to keep your hospital compliant or a practicing physician looking for a lifeline in this sea of paperwork, or just a healthcare tech enthusiast, the mission of this deep dive is to create the ultimate actionable guide for doctors on the do's and don'ts of using AI in clinical practice.
Absolutely.
We are cutting through the hype to give you a concrete checklist of what to embrace and what to absolutely avoid to stay compliant and protect your patients.
Because the reality is AI in medicine is no longer science fiction. It's not some whiteboard concept sitting in a Silicon Valley incubator anymore.
Right.
It's already sitting in the exam room with you.
Yeah, we are talking about everything from patient-facing symptom checkers to ambient voice-to-text scribes that are passively listening to consultations. But navigating this without crossing legal lines is, it's a total minefield.
Oh, yeah, a huge minefield.
So we've got a massive stack of sources to guide us today. We're pulling from the UK's Health Foundation report on automation, the latest CBH provider guidelines from August 2025, NHS England guidance on ambient scribing, a BMJ article on informed consent, a Healthicity compliance brief, and this really fascinating report from Ethicus on responsible AI.
And, to make sense of all this, we really have to look at the technology through what we call a socio-technical lens.
Okay, a socio-technical lens.
Yeah, because the Health Foundation report estimates that up to 44% of administrative tasks in general practice are theoretically automatable right now.
Wow, 44%.
Right, almost half. But healthcare isn't a factory assembly line, It is fundamentally a service co-produced between humans. It's relational.
Yeah.
So it's not just about what the software can do, it's about how it actually fits into the human workflow without squeezing out the human dimension of care.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's start with the paperwork, because before a doctor even begins to formulate a diagnosis, they have to record the patient's information. And this administrative side is where AI is making its biggest, most immediate impact.
Definitely.
Enter ambient scribing. For those who haven't seen this in action, these are AI tools that listen to a consultation in real time and automatically generate text transcripts, clinical notes, and summaries. I mean, it sounds like a total dream for a burnt-out physician.
It really does. It promises to free up the clinician to actually look the patient in the eye instead of staring at a computer screen and typing furiously.
Right.
But this brings us to our first major do for any clinic. You absolutely must have a human review the documentation before it goes into the permanent record.
Yeah, the CDH provider guidelines and the NHS guidance on ambient scribing are aggressively explicit about this. The provider staff are entirely responsible for the accuracy of the content. I like to think of it, using an AI scribe is kind of like having a brilliantly fast but slightly overconfident medical student in the room.
That's a great way to put it.
You wouldn't just blindly sign off on their chart notes without reading them,
Okay.
right? Because they lack clinical experience. You check their work.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is if we dig into why that human review is so critical, the technological limitations become really obvious.
Okay, like what?
Well, ambient voice technologies, despite all the marketing hype, they still struggle significantly with the reality of human speech.
Oh, sure.
They struggle with complex clinical terminology, regional dialects, heavy accents, and speech impairments.
So if a patient is speaking English as a second language, or maybe they have a speech disorder, the AI might just hallucinate a completely different medical context.
Yeah, it happens more often than you'd think. But there's another more insidious layer of technical vulnerability here called indirect prompt injection.
Indirect prompt injection?
Yeah, and this is a huge concern with large language models, or LLMs.
Wait, how does that actually work in a clinical setting? Walk me through what an indirect prompt injection looks like in the exam room.
Okay, so let's say a doctor is chatting with a patient, and the patient casually mentions, oh, my mother had type 2 diabetes. I wonder if I should worry.
Okay.
The ambient scribe is listening to all this. But because LLMs process natural language without human common sense, that casual speech might accidentally instruct the AI to perform an unintended task.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, the AI might interpret the phrase type 2 diabetes as a confirmed diagnosis for the patient themselves, rather than just family history.
Oh, wow.
Right, so it embeds a massive error into the permanent medical record simply because it couldn't distinguish between a hypothetical question and a factual diagnostic statement.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Which leads perfectly to our next Dardo. You need to explicitly state in the clinical notes where and how AI was utilized.
Yes.
Like, you have to identify which sections were AI generated. Because transparency, right at the documentation level, leaves a clear audit trail. Someone has to go back and figure out where a phantom diabetes diagnosis came from.
Exactly. It's basic clinical hygiene for the digital age.
But there is a massive don't attached to this documentation process. Do not, under any circumstances, use public AI bots like ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, or Grok in your virtual meeting platforms or to process patient notes.
Never.
The CBH guidelines strictly forbid this.
And this is a critical compliance threshold that a lot of well-meaning professionals cross by mistake. They think, oh, I'll just copy and paste these messy notes into ChatGPT to clean them up. It'll save me 20 minutes.
Right, and let's break down the mechanism of why that is so dangerous. When a doctor types a patient's symptoms or notes into a public bot like ChatGPT, that data doesn't stay neatly contained on their clinic laptop.
No, not at all.
It is instantly beamed across the internet to external servers, often offshore, where it's processed and potentially ingested as training data for future AI models.
Yeah.
You've basically just broadcasted protected health information, or PHI, to a massive public data farm.
And offshore data storage of PHI is expressly prohibited by law in many jurisdictions. The Healthicity Compliance Brief points out that you really can't overlook updates from federal watchdogs. We're talking about agencies like the Office for Civil Rights or the Inspector General who are actively hunting for privacy violations.
It's not a joke.
No, AI isn't just a quirky IT decision. It's a fundamental privacy and compliance decision. You must use properly vetted, closed-loop applications that have built-in guardrails against data leakage.
Okay, so we've locked down the paperwork, we're using compliant software, and we're double-checking the AI's notes.
Okay.
But that's just the administrative side. The real danger kicks in when a time-strapped doctor looks at those securely captured notes and says, hey, AI, what do you think the diagnosis is?
Right, and now we're shifting the risk from HIPAA compliance directly to patient safety.
The stakes get exponentially higher when we move from clinical documentation to clinical decision support.
Absolutely.
Though the potential is definitely staggering. I mean, the Health Foundation report outlines AI systems matching human accuracy in breast cancer screening.
Yes.
They highlight machine learning models predicting stroke mortality by crunching massive data sets that a human brain couldn't possibly process in a lifetime.
It's incredible.
We even have patient-facing symptom checkers, like your MD in Babylon Health, that triage patients before they even reach the clinic door.
The capabilities are very real, and they are powerful. But the Etica's risk taxonomy warns us about how we classify these tools.
Right.
A predictive triage tool embedded in an emergency room's electronic health record carries vastly different physical risks to a patient than, say, a lifestyle wellness app that just reminds you to drink water.
So what are the rules of the road for diagnostics then?
The absolute biggest don't is this. Don't allow AI to fully automate clinical decisions. The framework from Healthicity insists that AI must always support clinical care, not replace human judgment.
And tied to that is a very real psychological danger. Don't fall victim to automation bias.
Yes, automation bias is the psychological tendency for humans to stop questioning a computer's decision over time.
Let's paint a picture of that for a second. Imagine a doctor at hour 11 of a grueling 12-hour shift. The ER is packed. They look at a chest scan, and their gut intuition says something looks slightly off.
Okay.
But the AI software flashes a bright, green, low-risk badge on the screen. Because the AI has been right the last 50 times, the exhausted doctor ignores their own clinical intuition, assumes the computer knows best, and just sends the patient home.
That is automation bias in a nutshell. The human basically becomes a rubber stamp for the machine.
Okay, I'm going to push back on this for a second.
Sure.
Let's really unpack this scenario.
Yeah.
If an AI algorithm has been proven in massive clinical trials to be statistically more accurate at reading a specific type of X-ray or pathology slide than a human, aren't we actually doing a disservice to the patient by second-guessing it?
It's a fair point.
I mean, if the machine is objectively better at the math, why force the flawed, exhausted human to stay in the loop?
It's a great question, and it is honestly the core of the debate in medical tech right now. But the Health Foundation report addresses this head-on through a concept called procedural fairness.
Procedural fairness.
Right. Social psychology shows us that people care deeply about how decisions are made, not just the outcome of the decision.
Meaning the process matters just as much as the statistical accuracy.
Precisely. If a machine makes a decision about your health, even a statistically accurate one, patients often feel stripped of their dignity. Algorithms lack contextual sensitivity.
Right.
An AI might make a technically correct diagnosis based on a blood panel, but it has zero emotional intelligence. It cannot weigh a patient's hopes, their deep-seated fears, or their unique life context when formulating a treatment plan.
You can't read the room. Like a doctor can see that a patient is terrified and adjust how they deliver the news or offer a treatment plan that aligns with the patient's lifestyle. The AI just outputs a data point.
Exactly. And beyond the emotional aspect, from a technical standpoint, we have to worry about system drift, which Ethicus highlights as a major risk.
System drift. Break that down for me.
Think of system drift like a ship's compass slowly losing its magnetic north.
Okay.
An AI model might work perfectly during testing in 2023, but if the clinic's patient demographics shift, say, the surrounding neighborhood changes and the clinic starts seeing an older population, the AI's true north is still stuck in its 2023 training data.
Oh, I see.
Or the clinical guidelines might evolve, or a new disease strain might emerge.
So the AI continues making confident predictions based on an outdated map of reality.
Right.
And if you fully automated the decision and succumb to automation bias, you won't realize your compass is broken until you've hit an iceberg and patients are getting hurt.
Which brings up a critical do for any clinical practice using these tools. You do need to constantly monitor for bias. Both the CBH and Ethicus guidelines stress that AI models are trained on historical data.
Yeah.
If that historical data has gaps, say, a specific demographic or socioeconomic group wasn't heavily included in the original clinical trials, the AI's output will mechanically reflect that gap.
It's a data quality issue. The AI doesn't know it's being biased. It just assumes the incomplete data it was fed is the whole world.
Exactly.
And if left unchecked, that leads to inconsistencies in care quality that are very hard to detect because they're hidden inside this black box algorithm.
And because how decisions are made directly impacts patient trust, dropping a black box AI into the middle of the exam room threatens the foundational relationship between doctor and patient.
This flows perfectly onto the next major theme of our guide, which is the patient relationship and consent. We have a fascinating article from the BMJ here on informed consent. It points out that all of our existing consent frameworks in medicine assume that clinical decisions are being made by humans.
The ethical standard of informed consent is built entirely on transparency.
So our first article for maintaining the patient relationship: do practice proportionate disclosure. You don't need to sit the patient down and give them a master class in how neural networks process weights and biases. But you absolutely must tell them that an AI tool is contributing to their care, and you have to give them a chance to ask questions.
You also do have to have a clear procedure in place for patients who wish to opt out of treatment-based AI. The CBH guidelines mandate this.
Right.
If a patient is uncomfortable with an algorithm analyzing their case, there must be an alternative pathway for traditional human-led care.
And the absolute biggest dust in this category: don't hide the AI. The BMJ article makes it abundantly clear that undisclosed AI involvement creates a massive breach of trust if the patient finds out later.
Oh, for sure.
Public surveys show that the #1 fear people have about AI in medicine isn't necessarily robot doctors taking over. It's the loss of human interaction and oversight.
People want to know a human is at the wheel.
Let me play devil's advocate again, though. If I go to the doctor, they don't ask for my informed consent to use a specific brand of stethoscope or a standard digital blood pressure cuff. Why does an AI algorithm require special consent? Isn't it just another tool in the doctor's black bag?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, AI is fundamentally different from a stethoscope.
How so?
Well, a stethoscope is a passive tool. It just transmits the sound of your heartbeat to the doctor's ears. The doctor does all the interpreting. AI is probabilistic.
Okay.
It introduces algorithmic recommendations, mathematical assumptions, and developer-driven design choices into the actual cognitive process of the diagnosis itself. It is participating in the thinking.
Wow. So it's not a tool, it's a silent consultant in the room. And if you had a human specialist standing in the corner of the room weighing in on my diagnosis, you would definitely introduce them to me.
Exactly. And legally, this distinction is already being recognized. Under frameworks like UK GDPR Article 22, patients actually have a legal right not to be subject to automated decision-making that produces a significant legal or similar effect on them.
Really?
Yeah. So hiding the AI isn't just an ethical breach, it's a massive legal liability.
Which brings us to the final hurdle in our ultimate guide: governance, liability, and independent assurance. Because if we are asking for patient consent to use these opaque, probabilistic tools, we have to know exactly who is legally on the hook when the tool inevitably makes a mistake.
And this is where hospital administrators and clinic managers lose sleep.
The NHS guidelines deliver a very hard truth here. When it comes to liability for clinical negligence, it largely results in a non-delegable duty of care on the part of the trust or the primary care provider.
That phrase is everything. Non-delegable.
Let's translate that for the clinic manager listening right now. Does that mean if a software company builds a faulty AI and that AI hallucinates a diagnosis that harms a patient, the doctor or the clinic is the one getting sued?
Yes. The legal duty to the patient remains with the healthcare provider. You cannot outsource your duty of care to a software vendor.
That is a terrifying don't. Don't assume the tech vendor will take the fall.
And this is why the Etica's Guide emphasizes our next done do require independent AI assurance. You cannot rely solely on a vendor's internal assessment of their own product.
Because they want to sell it.
Right. It's a massive conflict of interest. The vendor wants to sell the software. They are not going to aggressively highlight the edge cases where their tool fails. Independent audits look at safety controls and real-world behavior that might not be visible in a slick marketing brochure.
Internally, you do need to assign a clinical safety officer. The NHS guidance requires this specifically to track ongoing risks, things like system unavailability, integration failures with your electronic health records, and data loss.
The governance required here is immense. Compliance is not a static checklist you fill out once during procurement and forget about. Regulators expect ongoing evidence that AI systems are being actively monitored post-deployment. Because third-party AI acts like a black box, you need rigorous data protection impact assessments, or DPIAs.
Hold on, let's translate that acronym too. A data protection impact assessment. What does that actually look like in practice for a clinic manager?
It's essentially a rigorous, documented stress test of your data pipeline. You are mapping out exactly what patient data is going into the AI, where that data physically travels, who has access to it, and what outputs are generated.
So it's a comprehensive risk map.
Exactly. If a system drifts or if a software update suddenly changes the regulatory status of the tool, your DPIA and your audit trails are the governance infrastructure that catches the problem before it reaches the patient.
Good governance is literally the only thing standing between a hospital and a massive liability lawsuit. So what does this all mean for the clinician listening right now?
Yeah.
It means that implementing AI requires funding the change, not just the tech. You don't just buy a software license and call it a day. You have to build massive human infrastructure around it.
That's the hard part.
You have to train your staff, create feedback loops, give clinicians time to adapt their workflows, and constantly audit the outputs. The ultimate irony of healthcare automation is that it currently requires a ton of human labor to deploy safely.
And that is the reality of the socio-technical lens we talked about at the start.
So to summarize our ultimate guide, AI is already here in the exam room. It is an incredibly powerful tool for supporting doctors handling administrative burdens through ambient scribing and strengthening diagnostic accuracy.
Absolutely.
But it fundamentally cannot replace the human accountability, the empathy, and the oversight required in medicine. You must review the outputs to prevent prompt injections. You must be transparent with your patients to maintain trust. You must monitor for data bias, and you must maintain that non-delegable duty of care.
It is about augmentation, never automation.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, there is one detail from the Etica's risk taxonomy that we haven't touched on yet, and it really reframes this entire conversation.
Yeah, if we are looking at the holistic impact of AI in healthcare, we have to look beyond the clinic walls and talk about the environmental impact.
The carbon footprint of AI.
Right. Large-scale AI models require staggering amounts of energy and compute power. And remember that system drift we discussed.
Yeah, the compass breaking.
Exactly. To prevent AI compasses from breaking, these models have to be constantly retrained on massive new healthcare data sets. We are talking about colossal server farms running around the clock, consuming millions of gallons of water for cooling and generating massive carbon emissions.
So, as healthcare systems aggressively rush to adopt AI to save time, to improve diagnostics, to boost individual patient health, there's a massive hidden cost.
There really is.
How will the medical community reconcile its foundational mandate to do no harm with the massive carbon footprint these technologies are actively placing on global public health? We're trying to heal the patient in front of us, but potentially degrading the environment that impacts the health of everyone else.
It adds an entirely new layer of complexity to the Hippocratic Oath.
It really brings us back to that broken X-ray machine we talked about at the very beginning. We wanted AI to be this clean, precise tool that just magically highlights the fracture. But instead, it's connected to this vast, complex web of data privacy, human psychology, legal liability, and even global energy consumption. The diagnostic waters are muddy indeed.
But with rigorous guidelines and transparent communication, the medical community can learn to navigate them safely.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.